Asian, she said. She looked at Noel. He nodded. Skivori? Already en route, Cade replied. They know how to move in hush. They arrived in a borrowed cargo tug painted the color of nothing. A Skivori trio clicked greetings, then fell into a silence that felt like competence rather than fear. In the tug's belly, Bassa laid out gear, low-light halo, vibration comms, a Pelagian resonance puck small enough to hide in a palm. The depot's corridors were dust and echoes. Noel led with a palm-flick lexicon the Skivori had taught him. Pause, yes, we're seen. Sarah's glow stayed banked, a soft ember, her ears reading the air like braille. They found Rafi in the bay, flanked by the three mercs. No shouting. No guns raised. Sarah stepped into view with palms open and tail low, Valari for guest. Noel set the resonance puck on the floor and rolled it forward. It hummed the Cantus chord, for we came to talk on purpose. We're not sending a squad, Noel said quietly. We brought soup. He had, absurdly, in a vacuum flask strapped to his thigh, caravan lentils from Meridian's kitchen. He set it down. The smell wandered like memory. The leader's jaw flexed. We're not idiots. No, Sarah agreed. You're scared of a world where trick words don't buy bread. The leader's ears tipped with pain. She hid badly. My sister bargains, she said. Your machine makes her language shine too clean. Her work used to feed us. Rafi, voice steadier now, said, we can tune Cantus to mark bargain play without branding it as deceit. There's a difference between craft and harm. Silence breathed. Across the bay, a fourth figure stirred, the leader's daughter, maybe 9, tail tucked, eyes too wide. She stared at Sarah the way children stared at stars. Sarah angled her body so the girl would see her glow lift, warm and non-threatening. Let us leave with him, Sarah said. Sit with us for 1 hour. Tell us what the bowl tastes like from your side of the table. No cops? The leader asked. No cops, Cade said later, dryly, when Noel pinged the update. Only witnesses. Tovin Velith arrived because of course he did, silent as a shadow and dressed like a warning. He stood at the bay's threshold, blade at his hip, eyes taking everything without moving. Sarah did not flinch. Noel did not step back. The merc leader's jaw set. This was a room full of predators trying very hard to be bulls. Your demand eats 2 ways, Tovin said mildly to the merc. You ask for safety from lies while sharpening your own. She met his gaze. We ask not to starve when the dictionary changes. Tovin drew the riverglass knife, and offered it hilt first to Noel. Cut a path, he said. Or choose a different tool. Noel took the knife. It felt honest and heavy. He set it beside the soup. This too is a tool, he said. It cuts hunger. We tune Cantus with you. Not to blunt bargaining, but to flag harm you call harm too. You sit in this room with us when we do it. The leader's daughter edged toward the flask, nose flaring. Sarah crouched, grace, not threat, and poured a small bowl. Guessed right, she said softly, extending it. The child looked to her mother. The mother nodded. The girl drank. A long, slow unclenching moved through the space. Rafi's shoulders dropped an inch. Sarah's glow lifted a shade. Tovin slid the knife back into its sheath. Bowl, then, he murmured. At least for tonight. They left together, mercs, Institute, Skivori, into the tug's low blue light. On the flight home, Rafi fell asleep with his head on Sarah's shoulder, tail from the leader's daughter curled around his wrist like a small sleeping question mark. Restorative circles take longer than headlines. Weeks of co-design sessions followed, mercs at the table with caravans and coders. They named a new flag in Cantus, Haggleplay, marked in amber, either clean gold nor hostile red, a category that respected artful bargaining without sanctifying manipulation. The first field test in a border market felt like a street festival, laughter when the flag chimed at a storyteller mid-exaggeration, applause when a buyer and seller co-signed the flag off. The reformed analyst published a guide, when the teeth mapped chimes, don't panic, don't lie, do explain. It became the Institute's most downloaded pamphlet. Senator Halley tried to spin Rafi's kidnapping into a failure. Cade met that clip with a deadpan. A child came home, and 2 communities improved their tools. If that's failure, I'll take a dozen. The leader of the Mercs, real name Lark, accepted a staff contract, not as security, but as a street semantics consultant, the Institute's first. She wore the title like armor and brought her daughter to the garden on odd Wednesdays. The kid liked the prism light. She called Tovin Grand Knot, which he pretended to dislike and completely adored. Mentorship is not glamour. It's calendars, tea that goes cold, and the muscle of paying attention. Noel took Rafi and 2 Skivori juniors under his wing and taught them how to breathe during hearings. Syrah guided a trio of Velari observants and a human counselor through the art of reading tail grammar without turning it into stereotyping. They adopted, not a child, but a cohort. Every quarter, the Institute paired a handful of apprentices with elders from multiple species. They called it the Hearthline Fellowship. The ritual was simple. On day 1, the elders served soup. On day 90, the apprentices did. What happened in between was the point. One night, Rafi knocked on Noel and Syrah's door with a shaky grin. "I translated a lullaby for a Skivori mother," he said. "She clicked at me like I invented rain." Syrah hugged him with both arms and tail. Noel pretended something was in his eye. Tovin sent a note written in a crisp, impatient hand. "You are building a small army of people who know how not to cut first. Accept this as praise." The council vote on the Universal Accord came under a sky freckled with satellites. The accord wasn't grandiose. It was practical, a set of shared meanings around guest right, sanctuary, medical consent, and the right to pause translation in dangerous ambiguity. Critics called it naive. Advocates called it overdue. Noel didn't want to make a speech. He did anyway. "I'm not here because I'm eloquent," he told the assembly. "I'm here because I once said the wrong thing in the right way to the right person. Protocol is scaffolding. People are the bridges." Syrah followed, glow steady, ears forward. "When we are afraid, we reach for certainty," she said. "Certainty is a blade. The accord is a bull. It will not feed you alone. It will remind you to feed each other." A dozen delegates wavered. Halley stood to oppose, smile even thinner now. Before he could speak, glass at dawn from the luminate flooded the chamber with a gentle geometry, a tetrahedron blushing at one corner. Cantus rendered the projection's meaning as a single sentence on every screen. "We ask you to choose a boundary that holds love." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was intent. The accord passed, narrowly, honestly. The room exhaled like a ship easing off a reef. Syrah's gold rose in wide, soft waves. Noel let himself grin. No one died. The star didn't flare so much as roar. A coronal mass ejection spat an electromagnetic fist across space and slapped Meridian like a toy. Lights died, then stuttered. Gravity hiccuped. The station's outer ring reported impacts, micrometeorites hitchhiking on solar wind. Cantus went dark for 7 minutes, the longest 7 minutes of Noel's life. People yelled in 3 languages. Someone cried. Somewhere, a human impulse wanted to fill the silence with orders that would make things worse. Syrah grabbed a handheld and clicked a Skivori comm stamp she'd learned last winter. Rhythm, not words. The handheld pulsed it through the corridor floor. Elders and kids felt it in their bones. Noel moved with guards to a viewport breach and began human triage hand sign. You, sealant, you, brace, you, breathe. When Cantus flickered awake, it did so humming. It had cached the lullaby chord for We Are Tired but Still Here and defaulted to it for non-critical channels. Basu hooped. Cade swore, affectionately, at a wall. Mara arrived in a pressure hood with a repair crew like a general in a war novel who preferred the line. Tovin handed out soup with a grimace that could almost be tenderness. By night cycle, Meridian wore patches like medals and the feeds were already calling it the solar lesson. Noel wrote a small post instead. We didn't fix it because of a machine. We fixed it because quiet let us choose the right small things. Version 3 of Contus didn't look different until you touched it. On contact, it asked a question: door, window, or mirror? Door meant you wanted to cross into someone else's space. Window meant you wanted to look without entering. Mirror meant you wanted to understand your own reflection first. People laughed at the poetry, then used it. Disputes dropped when a window became a mirror. Invitations became clearer when a door stayed a door. The lullaby archive spun into the cradle constellation, a network of beacons broadcasting bedtime songs into deep space. Scivorry hatcheries softened their hard-shell rites with the human hum. Pelagian mothers attached resonance pods to cradles that vibrated kindness through water. Luminate children fell asleep under rotating shapes that cupped sorrow kindly. The accord symbols, an open hand, a bowl, a small ember, appeared on market stalls and embassy doors. Guest right codified into 3 steps written in baby simple glyphs: offer/ask/announce. Halley's faction tried to strip funding once more and lost by a margin wider than the first vote. The world had learned the shape of the bowl. They returned one more time to the garden where earth ferns tangled with Vela 12 glass leaves. The prism from glass at dawn threw braided water on the floorboards. Beyond the window, Meridian turned, patched and proud. "You know," Noel said, "we never wrote a manual for us." "We didn't need one," Sarah replied. "We built a practice." She guided his hands to her cheeks, warm under orange fur, glow pulsing like a satisfied planet. "Say it," she murmured, the old request that had changed both their lives. He smiled without baring teeth. "You're stunning, Sarah Veleth." Her gold went bright enough to light the glass leaves. "Say it again." "I will," he said. "Every time I forget protocol and remember you." They sat with tea and thunder coffee, watching the prism paint patience. Somewhere in the station, an apprentice explained guest right to a skeptical dockworker and did it well. Somewhere else, a lullaby smoothed a tremor out of a child's breath. In a far ocean, a Pelagian envoy told a storm it could go around their home this time, and the storm listened. Noel thought of the boy he'd been on the first day, palms damp, brain full of rules, mouth full of the wrong word that turned out to be the only one that mattered. He thought of the woman beside him, all light and edges and mercy, who had taken that word and made a door. "The best mistakes," he said softly, "are the ones we keep choosing on purpose." Sarah finished, head on his shoulder, tail curled around his wrist. Night cycle dimmed the corridor. The prism's river water patterns slowed and stilled. Their cups emptied. Their calendar for tomorrow was full of small, necessary things. They rose together. At the door, Sarah glanced back at the room, at the light, at him. "Let's go feed the world," she said. They stepped out, 2 beings from different homes with matching hands and borrowed languages, carrying bowls, knives sheathed, and a translator that hummed like a heart. The bridge called Meridian, once a station, now a practice, held steady beneath their feet. And far beyond, a new species turned its face to the stars and asked if anyone was there. The answer was waiting, patient and bright. It came as a whisper, a pulse buried in cosmic background noise, repeating every 7 hours. At first, scientists dismissed it as magnetar chatter or a data glitch. But Sarah was awake late, for backlit by the glow of her tablet, tracing harmonics with a hunter's patience. She tilted her head, ears flicking. "That speech," she murmured. Noel leaned over her shoulder. "You sure?" She nodded, tail curling. "It's layered. A lattice. Someone is knocking politely on the universe's door." The signal came from Epsilon Civ, an unremarkable system with 1 gas giant and a handful of icy moons. The pattern wasn't like any known species language, too slow for Scivorry, too structured for Pelagians, too asymmetrical for Luminate. It was patient. The council scrambled to prepare a listening outpost. Kate sent Noel and Sarah to lead first contact protocol development. Mara offered one dry blessing. "Bring soup. The first language is always soup." 3 weeks later, they sat in a reinforced chamber aboard the Harbolite Array, a deep space listening post perched in the system's edge. Noel fed the pulse through Cantus, but the machine faltered. It displayed a symbol, a circle broken by a spiral, with a quiet line of text, no model found. Request guidance. Sarah smiled faintly. It's humbling when the machine admits it's out of its depth. Noel reached for a different approach. Let's build the first layer by hand. He clapped a simple rhythm, slow and even. Sarah mirrored it, letting her markings brighten with each beat. When they broadcast the rhythm back, the spiral pulse changed tempo slightly, curious. A reply. They're listening, Sarah whispered, tail flicking excitement. The signal led them to a moon locked in the gas giant's shadow. They landed in a canyon carved by ancient glaciers, its walls reflecting starlight like a cathedral of mirrors. At the center, a structure of ice towers, perfectly geometric, glowing faintly from within. A small exploration team, humans, Valari, and one limited envoy, moved cautiously through the corridors. Cantus stayed quiet, merely projecting shapes and harmonic lines it couldn't yet translate. In the largest chamber, Noel and Sarah saw them, tall, crystalline beings, bodies faceted like cut gems, voices vibrating in chords that shimmered in the ice. Luminate cousins, Glass at Dawn murmured, their prism facets trembling. But not like us. The being stepped forward, emitting low harmonic tones that felt like standing inside a cathedral bell. Sarah's fur lifted, her ears twitching with fascination. They're showing emotions through resonance, she said softly. I can feel it in my chest. Noel nodded. We'll have to invent a whole new layer for Cantus. The lead being placed a crystalline hand against its chest, then against the ice floor, producing a wave that rippled outward. Cantus finally printed a word, welcome. For months, Meridian became a music school. Engineers, xenolinguists, and musicians sat in a circle with crystalline visitors, playing tones back and forth like students trading phrases. Sarah's natural ear for tone became legendary. She could hum a resonance pattern back with near-perfect accuracy. They're teaching us like you teach a child to speak, Noel said one night, exhausted but exhilarated. Slowly, patiently. Sarah tilted her head, smiling softly. Maybe they're not just teaching us language. Maybe they're teaching us patience itself. Cantus evolved rapidly, growing a resonance layer capable of mapping emotional frequencies. One day, during a calibration session, a crystalline envoy played a low, layered chord that shimmered like a summer dusk. Cantus printed, We remember being alone. We are glad you came. That night, Noel and Sarah sat together in the garden, surrounded by glowing glass leaves. We're rewriting the definition of communication, Noel said quietly. Every species adds a new sense. Sarah curled her tail around his wrist. We're building a universe that listens with its whole body. Not everyone wanted a listening universe. A faction calling themselves the Silence Pact began sabotaging relays, arguing that too much connection would erode cultural purity. They attacked a listening post in the Luminate home system, cutting communications for 3 days. Meridian became a fortress, patrolled by Skivori guard cliques and Valari hunters. Noel and Sarah found themselves writing counterpropaganda with the same care they wrote translation layers. This is a war of meaning, Kate said grimly. If they can convince people that connection is infection, we're done. Sarah stood before a crowd of nervous apprentices and civilians and told a story, not of politics, but of a caravan child saved by a song through a frozen door. Her glow filled the room with steady warmth. We are not a threat, she said, voice low but commanding. We are a hearth. And hearths are strongest when shared. That speech went viral across a dozen worlds. For a brief moment, warmth drowned out fear. Noel Reyes rubbed his palms on his dark blue uniform until the fabric felt hot under his fingers. Meridian Station drifted in the velvet throat between Earth's orbit and a quiet Lagrange point, a ring of glass and trust the size of a small city, built, rumor said, in 8 frantic years for one purpose, a face-to-face meeting with the unknown. Breathe, said Commandant Maracade, voice low and steady. Protocol. Formal registers. Hands visible. No open grins. Our guests don't smile? Noel asked, faking lightness. His tongue stuck to the roof of his mouth. They bare teeth in combat, Cade said. So, no smiling. He nodded. He'd spent 3 years in accelerated contact school, diagramming alien sentence trees and rehearsing ceremonial bows before mirrors. He knew 8 ways to say hello in galactic trade and 24 cultural caveats engraved into his skull. But today, knowledge felt like a suit that didn't fit. Through the vaulting window, a pearlescent ship slid into view, its hull veined with slow gold. The ship made no sound as it aligned to the docking ring. Noel's heart knocked once, twice, like a fist on a door. The Volari delegation, Cade said. Remember, observe twice, speak once. They assembled in the white auditorium, Earth's flags to the left, the ink-tilt symbol of the United Worlds to the right, and in the middle a long table that looked too human for what was about to happen. The far doors irised open. They stepped like brushstrokes brought to life, the Volari, tall, fine-boned, digitigrade grace muted inside tailored robes. Orange and russet fur ran in polished swathes along forearms and temples, broken by faint bioluminescent sigils that pulsed when they breathed. Ears like curved leaves flicked to the smallest sound, bright tails swayed with conversational nuance. At their head walked an elder with white-tipped ears and mantle-black robes. Beside him, someone younger. She was sunlight in motion. Orange fur deepening to ember at her wrists, cheek tufts fine as silk, eyes a gold hazel that caught every light. Where her robe opened at the collar, thin luminous lines traced her throat like a language the air could read. Noel forgot how to stand. Cade stepped forward, spoke the ritual words in trade with perfect cadence. The elder answered in a wind-soft tenor. Names flowed around Noel until they gathered on him. This is Cultural Liaison Noel Reyes, Cade said. Lexicographer, field ethnographer. The young Volari stepped forward. I am Siraveleth, observant of voice, she said, trade, but shaped by a gentle rasp that made the language sound new. I study meanings between meanings. Noel had practiced. I am honored to learn at your side, observant. Instead, his treacherous earth mouth blurted, in plain English. Wow. You're stunning. Silence took the room with both hands. Sarah's ears lifted, her tail stilled. The bioluminescent sigils beneath her fur flared from dim copper to living gold, washing her throat and cheekbones in warm light. Noel's stomach fell through the floor. I apologize, he managed. I meant formal respect. In your spoken lattice, Sarah said softly, in English now. Stunning is praise of beauty. You intended praise? The glow along her neck brightened like a heartbeat. Yes, Noel whispered. I did. The elder's ears tipped, an unreadable gesture. Cade cleared her throat. Protocol staggered forward, found its feet. Yet Noel, in the new architecture of silence, knew something had already shifted. Sarah's eyes contained a question that no manual had prepared him to answer. They did not exile him to a supply closet. Instead, Cade exhaled through her nose in her office, which was somehow worse. You didn't cause a war, she said. You merely composed a new chapter. I broke Rule 1, Noel said. Don't improvise. You embodied Rule 0, Cade countered. Pay attention. What did you see? He thought of Sarah's light. Her markings brightened. Not anger. Not alarm. More like delight? Dr. Arun Basu, Xenobiology, looked up from a tablet. Preliminary profiles on Volari chroma signals suggest bioluminescent language layers. Gold tends to index pleasure, receptivity, sometimes surprise. So I didn't offend her. Noel dared a breath. Don't staple that conclusion to your heart, Cade said. We still don't know what else gold can mean. And yet, she tapped a message. The Volari Observancy requested you for tomorrow's informal exchange. Siraveleth named you specifically. Basu arched a brow. Your spectacular lack of protocol may have been informative. That night, Meridian's habitat ringside around Noel's quarters. He lay awake, mapping words he might safely use. compliments and microgradients. Your robe is elegant. Your research is remarkable. Not you are sunlight in a body. The next day, the informal room was all movable seating and light that warmed rather than interrogated. Cyril waited with 3 Vulpine colleagues, a broad-shouldered artisan with ink-dark forearms, a narrow, nimble one with data lenses, the elder from the dais, whose presence softened without diminishing. When Noelle entered, Sarah's ears lifted and the golden signal along her collar returned, calibrated brighter than before. "Good morning, Noelle Reyes," she said in careful English, the vowels rounder. "Your name tastes like river stones." "That's good?" he asked. She tilted her head. "Stable. Grounded. We discuss honesties today. Your kind speaks them openly." "We try," Noelle said. "Sometimes we fail spectacularly." "Yesterday," Sarah said, "you marked my form was stunning. Among the Vulpine, to remark upon appearance is reserved for closest circles. Kin. Chosen. Or those who intend a path toward choosing." Heat climbed Noelle's neck. "I shouldn't have said it. I'm sorry." She held up a narrow hand, first shifting with the gesture, light glancing off it. The intent felt bright. "Your word fed the gold in my skin. We call that light varies, truth pleasure." The surprise was clean. Noelle swallowed. "In my culture, compliments can be courteous, flirtatious, or predatory." Sarah's ears swept back a millimeter. "Predatory? Used to harm. To manipulate." She considered this. "Then teach me how your species parses bright from barbed." What followed unwound like delicate thread. Noelle drew gradations, nice versus beautiful, handsome versus striking, how tone bend meaning, how context braided with safety. Sarah mirrored the concepts with Vulpine frames, how tail set and ear angle were not merely mood but grammar, how bioluminescence could contradict spoken language, a feint or a shield. Her colleagues took notes in quiet bursts, but often they receded into a respectful hush as if witnessing something they did not wish to break. "Why so many words?" she asked. "Because feelings shape themselves like rivers," Noelle said. "We name the bends. And when the river overflows, then we invent new names." Her smile was small and brilliant. Gold climbed her throat in answering waves. Meridian woke to alarms that sounded like steel scraping ice. Noelle ran, the rings curve pulling at his stride. In command, screens rioted with color and text. Trade glyphs tumbled across one panel like falling leaves. Human legalese glared back in another, feral with capital letters. "What happened?" Noelle asked. "Trade Draft, Section 5, Cade said, jaw tight. "We propose joint stewardship of Vulpine ancestral orbitals." The auto-translator rendered it as exclusive dominion. Noelle's gut turned. "That's not a slip. That's a canyon. Vulpine elder houses are already withdrawing," Bassa said. "Sarah's people are sealing their hull." On one feed, Noelle saw them. The Vulpine delegation in a corridor of glass ribs, markings flickering not gold now but a storm of smoldering carmine and slate. Sarah among them, her ears tucked tight, light dimmed to an ember he could barely see. "Cade," Noelle said, "formal channels are compromised. Let me try the informal." "That's the opposite of what I should authorize," Cade said grimly. "Go." He sent a single line to Sarah's account, observation deck in 5. "Please." He waited, hand open over the rail of a window that framed an ocean of black and a braid of distant station lights. For long heartbeats, nothing. Then soft paw steps that were somehow quieter than boots. Sarah stood with her back to him. Her silhouette was all vertical strength and curved tail. When she turned, her eyes were amber glass over fire. "Your people wrote words that eat," she said in English. "Words with teeth." "We didn't," Noelle said. "Not on purpose. I swear to you." "Our translators are not fools," Sarah said. "They know trade." When they saw Dominion, they did not invent it. He took a breath that felt like sand. Say the trade term they read. She told him, 2 syllables that, in certain inflections, lean toward ownership where they should have leaned toward guardianship. Noel closed his eyes. Joint stewardship. Inhuman bureaucrat map to paired holding, which the machine aligned to dominion because a semantic vector smiled the wrong way. Syrah, we meant twin caretaking. Shared guardianship. Not control. He lifted his hands, palms open, human bones trying to look harmless. Let me show you the original drafts. Not the postures. The raw. Her ears edged forward a fraction. The light at her throat, was it brighter? You will open your nest of documents. All of them, Noel said. We can build the meaning from the beginning. Line by line. She studied him like a canyon. Why should I trust you? You are one voice. Because you asked me for honesties, he said quietly. Because yesterday you said my word fed your gold. If I betray that, then I lose you, and I lose the work that makes me breathe. Silence, a long one, stretched so taut Noel thought it might snap. Then Syrah exhaled, ears easing. There is also this. My mother is first listener of the conclave. She will want to eat this error with her own teeth. Your mother. I do not wear the mantle inside these walls, Syrah said. But blood knows blood. If I ask for a gathering, it will happen. Then ask, Noel said. And bring your teeth. They convened in Meridian's central forum, which looked like a cathedral decided to become a sunroom, high glass, high echo, high stakes. Cade sat stripped of swagger, Basu with his date and needle straight. Across the table, the Valari elder, Syrah's mother, arrived, white-tipped ears cool, robed deep as wells. She wore a circlet of woven glass that caught every light and broke it into rain. I am first listener Maravelith, she said in trade that sounded like poetry reduced to axioms. We begin with wound, not welcome. Show us the blade. Noel opened the draft trunk, raw memos, scrawled edits, markup that proved how careless good intentions could be. He toggled the machine translator off and laid the English text bare, then walked it, clause by clause, through new trade that he and Syrah cobbled together on a shared slate. Twin caretaking, not paired holding, open archives, not rights of exclusion, ancestral sanctity preserved as sacred, not historic zones administrable. Syrah's mother asked without mercy. Noel answered without armor. Where the words thinned, Cade stepped in. When biology mattered, Bassa knitted analogies in soft human voice. And Syrah braided two worlds. Her tale noted emphasis the way a human hand might move. Her luminous markings rose in small approving crescents when nuance landed, dimmed when both sides drifted. She coaxed her mother's questions toward the steepest angles, then slipped essays into the air that both humans and Valari could climb. After 2 hours, the storm colors along the Valari's throats had eased to plum and ember. After 3, the first listener's ears lifted a degree. After 4, she addressed Noel directly. You argued from your own throat, she said. No shield of machine. You bled your intention, and the light of my daughter answered. I do not call this trust. But I do not call it theft. Cade's lips twitched, the closest she'd come to a smile today. We propose, she said, a new structure, a living translator, 2 of them, who will stand between drafts and deployment. Their charge is not word to word, but culture to culture. The first listener's gaze moved to Syrah. And you would bind your glow to this human's throat. Syrah's markings brightened, not shyly. I would. Then we will watch you both, very closely, the first listener said. We will read your light and listen to his breath. Build something that does not eat. Work found them like weather, constant, changing, sometimes rough. Their shared office became a laboratory for meanings. Noel brought coffee he pretended wasn't essential. Syrah arrived with wildflower tea that smelled like rain in pine. They tested every term where a human might hide mischief behind courtesy, and every gesture where a Valari might mask injury behind dignity. We do not bare our throats, Syrah said one morning, except to surgeons and lovers. When humans tilt their chins as sign of confidence, it reads to us as surrender, or an invitation to cut. So we'll keep our chins down, Noel said. Noted. You favor direct eye contact. She held his gaze deliberately. On our side, there's a span between steady regard and hunting stare. You crossed it yesterday when you were excited about idioms. I was predatory about idioms. You were a wolf for metaphors. He laughed. She answered with a small trill, half-purr, half-stringed instrument. Gold ran comma-like along her throat. Sometimes they fought, but not about them. About commas that reweighted a clause. About which human synonym most exactly laid its spine beside the shape of a Valari verb. Syrah could be severe in those moments, unsparing, bright with rigor. Noel loved her precisely then, because he could trust the edges. Outside the office, Meridian learned from them. Guards stopped grinning. Valari guests learned to ignore 100 accidental provocations in the tilts of human bodies. The cafeteria served fish that flaked the way the Valari said fish ought to flake, which made Syrah gleam and Noel make a note that diplomacy sometimes tasted like lunch done right. Some nights, after the station clocks went soft and the rings hum lowered like a cat's chest in sleep, they sat side by side on the observation bench, not working. Noel told her about the river his grandfather fished. Syrah told him about glass forests on Vela 12 where the wind played the branches like flutes and the ground lit their paws. What do you call that light? He asked. She thought. Home. They were supposed to discuss the new cross-species welcoming protocol. Instead, Syrah said, among the Valari, there is a phrase, sil echo. Soul echo. It is when two minds find the same rhythm without forcing it. Do you believe in it? Noel asked. I believed it as a story for children, she said, looking past her reflection into the star-salt dark. A ceremonial metaphor. Then I began hearing your breath when you were not in the room. He glanced at her, post-doing drumline improv. That's either very sweet or extremely concerning. I do not mean as ghosts, she said, smile bare of threat. I mean, I hear the shape of how you think the pauses. It made me less lonely inside my skull. Noel let that live in him a long second. I hear you too. In the choices I make before I say them. She turned toward him, ears canted forward, gold slowly climbing. Then perhaps the story is not only for children. There was a version of this moment where Noel launched into a speech about impossibility and ethics. He let it pass. Syrah, he said instead. I like no love. He tripped, recovered, smiled without showing teeth. I love you. Her breath hitched. The gold along her throat and jaw exploded into sunlight. The marks down her forearms, always restrained even when she laughed, flared in answering symmetries he'd never seen. Her tail lifted, then curled slowly, like punctuation on something ancient. And you, she said simply. I feared the word would break the translation, and then I remembered we build the translation. Kate did not throw a chair when Noel asked for transfer to the Joint Meaning Institute. She did take off her glasses and polish them for so long he thought the lenses might become holes. You're asking to pioneer the field and the relationship, she said. Simultaneously. Optimizes commute, Noel said. Her mouth did that not smile again. Do you understand the political drag this will create? Biocompatibility questions, inheritance law, every interspecies fear lit up like a runway? Yes, Noel said. And none of it makes me want it less. Cade set the glasses down. You were an unremarkable student, Reyes. Wow, he said. That feels. Until you were asked to care. She finished. Then you caught fire. She signed the request. Be very, very good at this. On the Valari side, Syrah had a different mountain, her mother, who met her in a private chamber lined with woven glass and soft dark rugs that drank sound. You intend to bind yourself to a human, the first listener said without embroidery. I intend to walk beside him, Syrah said. Binding implies a rope. Words, her mother said, though her ears tipped with faint amusement. You would become a story. We already are a story, Syrah said. Let us be a true one. Her mother's silence was long, attentive, as if the air itself debated. Bring the world something it can hold without cutting itself, she said at last. If you bleed, do it in private. If you shine, shine wide. 6 months rewrote Meridian's corridors. The Joint Meaning Institute straddled a glass bridge where human steel met Valari filament. Classrooms opened in arcs instead of boxes. Lecture halls had both chairs and soft sloped platforms where digitigrade legs found comfort. The cafeteria served river fish and Vela 12 grains and a coffee that Valari scholars declared tasted like dark thunder in a cup, which Noel took as a high compliment. Noel stood before a cluster of young envoys from 6 continents and 2 orbital habitats. You will make mistakes, he told them. Make them honest. Then fix them loudly. A hand shot up. What if the mistake is unforgivable? You won't know until you ask forgiveness, he said. You'll be surprised how often a door you thought was a wall opens. Across the room, Sarah briefed a cohort of Valari observants, posture adjustments for humans not to misread, the difference between silence of respect and silence of fear. How human appetite could be literal or metaphorical, and often both in one sentence. Between sessions, Noel and Sarah found each other in the corridor garden, earth ferns tangling with Vela 12 glass-leaf shrubs that sang in wind from the life support vents. 2 months earlier, Noel had asked in a human way if she'd build a life with him. He didn't kneel. A kneel looked too much like throat-baring. Instead, he placed into her palm a small filament ring that glowed with a light borrowed from her own markings. She had touched it to her throat, where it caught and threw her gold. Yes, she'd said, like a bell spoken. The machine cannot be trusted alone, Asa said, grim and pleased. So teach it to trust you. Noel and Sarah led a project that felt like inventing rope while building a bridge, a translator that didn't flatten cultures into synonyms but carried context as annotations, colors, micropauses, flags for warn this could hurt. They built a layer for gesture. Sarah recorded a lexicon of ear sets and tail arcs. Noel built parallel tags for human brow shifts, hand angles, the smile that is not bearing. They field tested with low-stakes exchanges, cooking shows, schoolyard games, then ratcheted up to resource agreements. Once, the machine tried to render a Valari proverb literally. Do not put your throat to the river when you want rain. Noel laughed. Sarah didn't. The annotation learned to flag proverbs with a chime and an optional story pane. Basu called it the morality of footnotes. Some nights they fell asleep on the office couch with code drifting on the wall, Sarah's tail tucked over Noel's hip like a comma insisting the sentence was not finished. The glow along her jaw softened to amber. Noel's breathing matched it, unplanned and perfect. The Institute's 6-month celebration gathered humans and Valari and a handful of cautious onlookers from species that had stayed quiet until the experiment looked less like a fire and more like a hearth. Director Cade, uniform traded for formal black, raised a glass. We failed beautifully, she said. We will do it again. Noel stood when she called his name, heart thudding. He did not plan to make another strange, sincere speech, but sincerity had been the engine so far. He didn't kill it now. 2 years ago, I tried to say hello and said something true instead, he said. It could have broken us. Instead, someone brave let it make a door. Sarah rose beside him. Her markings lifted in molten loops. We learned that truth without kindness can be a knife, and kindness without truth is a mask. Together, they can be a bridge. Applause came like rain on glass. Somewhere behind them, the bridge's tension cables hummed when a crew tram crossed, a deep, singing vibration. Noel liked to imagine the structure approved. After speeches and compatible toasts, coffee for some, tea for others. They walked the quiet corridor back to their shared quarters, a space designed by architects who understood that love sometimes required different chairs and the same window. What are you thinking? Noel asked. That first day, Sarah said. When your words stunned me. You looked at me as if my light was not only fur. As if you could read the meanings it threw. I didn't, he said softly. I only knew that looking at you felt like hearing music I'd been humming without knowing. Her ears went flat in a way he knew meant tenderness, not fear. "Tell me again," she whispered. "The word." "You're stunning," he said, and yes, he had learned gentler synonyms since, but the old ones still struck true. She glowed so bright the window carried it, and somewhere a worker in the next ring glanced up and smiled without knowing why. They took the translator to Vela 12, to an outpost that glittered like frost under twin moons. The glass forest sang differently here, higher, wind more salt. They presented to a council that wore glass circlets like Sarah's mother, and spoke trade the way mathematicians dance. A new problem bit them. The machine rendered guess right as permission to drain resources. Noel felt the old cold fear. Sarah's tail flicked once, annoyance more than alarm, and she leaned in, luminous and precise, annotating the term with a story of hearths and low tables and the ritual of leaving a dish of river fish untouched for a traveler who might arrive. "Oh," one elder said, ears rising. "You mean love?" "In policy clothing," Noel said. "Then say love and policy together," the elder said. "We will not mistake that," the machine learned. Noel wondered if everything hard in the universe was just a stubborn noun begging for a friend. News found them whether they hid or stood under it. Their engagement became a ribbon that ran along Earth news nets and a bead of light in Valari story feeds. Many voices were kind. Some, predictably, were not. A human legislator asked in a broadcast if it was wise to hybridize diplomacy with romance. A Valari traditionalist wrote a careful essay about the danger of celebrated exceptions. Noel and Sarah read it in their kitchen with fish and thunder coffee. "They are not wrong to be careful," Sarah said. "But I choose not to be careful here. Sometimes careful is just a slower no," Noel said. They answered not with rebuttals but with work. Their universal translator moved into version 1. Schools applied for it. Hospitals asked for a medical module. A mining guild requested a version for hazard warnings in a different species tunnels. Noel and Sarah built it, until their hands smelled like machine heat and wildflower tea. They wrote vows for a ceremony that would happen twice, once under glass forests on Vela 12. Once under a grove of old earth oaks that had seen war and children, and everything in between. "I will not bind you," Noel said when they rehearsed, "because binding would make me cowardly, mistaking possession for safety." "I will not ask you to dim," Sarah answered, "when your brightness calls others home." "I will walk when you can run," he said. "I will wait when you must walk," she said. They practiced not until perfect. That felt like lying to the future, but until the words sat in. On a quiet morning, Noel woke to Sarah's head on his shoulder, her tail curled against his shins, the low ember of her markings painting the ceiling in soft shapes. He thought of the first day, of the way protocol cracked and let light in. He thought of the girl in him that had wanted to be perfect, and the man who'd learned that perfect is a wall you can starve behind. "What are you thinking?" Sarah murmured, not lifting her head. "That we're lucky," he said. "We are also working," she said, amused sleep in her voice. "Lucky work, then." In the lab, they opened a new file. Cross-species lullabies. It turned out love did not only build treaties. It built songs, and if you translated the pause between lines, you could teach a machine to sway. The first real fracture found them on Vela 12 during the pilot of version 1.3. The Institute had sent a mixed team, engineers, mediators, 2 cooks for morale, to help a frontier township negotiate water ration protocols with a caravan guild. Simple on paper, the river had thinned after a mild dust winter, and the township's reservoirs needed a stable draw while caravans crossed the flats. Sarah's mother, first listener Mara, attended quietly, not as conclave but as kin visiting. She wore a travel circlet of smoked glass and a plain robe. Still, when she entered the hall the air seemed to choose its words more carefully. Noel stood at the console with the translator's contextual layers open like a patient on a table. Sarah paced, tail coiling and uncurling, eyes sweeping ear sets and tail angles like a maestro. "Begin with gratitude," Sarah murmured. Noel toggled the opener, trade phrases annotated with a human-style preface that said this is respect. There is no hidden bill. The caravan's lead, lean, sand-burnished, with ember streaks along her cheeks, answered in kind, a small gold rising under her fur. Then came the rub. The township proposed a priority reserve. The machine mapped it as first drink right. To a caravan that lived by guess right, those 3 words crawled with teeth. Their leader's markings went slate. Tails stiffened. Syrah's ears snapped forward. Stop, Noel said, palms raised. He drilled the term apart. Not first as in before you. First as in first bucket that never empties. The baseline, the safety line. Think of it as the hearth bowl everyone can count on, even when storms play bones with the roofs. Syrah layered a Valari story, a winter night, a low fire, a communal pot left untouched by the host until the last traveler arrived. The machine pulsed a chime and pushed a note to both sides, metaphor, see tale. The caravan leader's tail softened. Ah, she said. Then call it hearth line. The township mayor, human, gray at the temple, cheeks wind-chapped, looked sideways. That sounds like charity, he muttered. It sounds like survival dressed in dignity. Syrah said, voice mild, there's not. Noel watched the mayor's shoulders drop as if someone unclenched a fist inside him. The word hearth line felt different in his mouth when he tried it. The agreement turned, slowly at first, then all at once, like a flock changing direction. Later, by the glass-branch grove, Mara stood with them, tail folded neatly, eyes reflecting the moons. The word you saved, she said to Noel. It would have cut. You turned it to cloth. I had help, he said, nodding to Syrah. You have each other, Mara replied. Use that carefully. People will try to use it for you. The sabotage came as a whisper inside a patch. Version 1. 4 included a minor efficiency change, handling of long lists, faster parsing of hover annotations, but in a buried module a mischief maker had salted a cross-map. Anywhere the machine encountered the human idiom put our heads together, it rendered in Valari as press your throat to my knife. Tests missed it. The phrase hadn't appeared in the training batch. They caught it live, in front of 15 Valari apprentices and 3 human coordinators. The room stilled as if someone had drained the air. Syrah's markings flatlined to ash. Noel felt heat in his jaw, a furious hunger for a name. We don't guess, Syrah said, voice steady. We read. She pulled the module open, claws flicking like a harpist peeling stubborn notes, tail describing furious cursive. Noel threw a sandbox around the buggy routine, traced the hash chain backward. The signature led to a throwaway account, then to a private repo with salted credentials. Someone had wanted an incident. They scrubbed and patched, of course. They also did something harder. They summoned everyone in the Institute to the atrium and played the failure on a wall 3 stories high. Cade stood without rank pins, Basu without clinician's distance, Mara without circlet. This is what a wound looks like before it scabs, Cade said. We will not hide our injuries. Someone did this. We don't know who yet. We will find out. In the meantime, we are going to teach our machine to be suspicious in the right places. Syrah added a new layer to the translator, hostile drift detection. It was not romantic. It was math painted with ethics, a subroutine that scanned for sudden semantic inversions and flagged them for living eyes. Noel named it the Teeth Map. The name stuck. At dusk, in the garden between oaks and glass-leaf shrubs, Syrah leaned against Noel's shoulder. I felt rage, she admitted. Hot as desert metal. I wanted to name an enemy before one existed. Same, Noel said. He watched a maintenance drone hum past, its light a soft, practical blue. We did the braver thing. We asked for witnesses, Syrah said. We asked to be seen in the middle, not only at the end. Her gold returned, not bright but present. This is the work of always. They married twice that year, first under the glass forests, where wind braided song through translucent branches and the ground glowed faintly with the old light of Vela 12, then on earth, beneath oaks older than Meridian Station, whose leaves whispered in a language no machine would ever map. The Valari ceremony was all circles and breath. Guests formed rings that opened and closed as Syrah and Noel walked paths in quiet patterns. Vows were spoken with palms bare and weapons nowhere. When Noel said, "I will not speak for you when your silence has its own meaning," Syrah's mother's ears rose with pride. When Syrah said, "I will not translate your fear into duty," Basu blinked too fast and pretended dust. They wore gifts rather than jewelry. Syrah received a coil of river-bright wire from a caravan elder, signifying safe passage. Noel wore an ink mark on his wrist painted by the township mayor, Heartline, in Valari script. It lasted a month and left a ghost he traced with his thumb when the nights were long. On Earth, the oaks hosted a different music, strings and breath, the low drum of human joy. Cade spoke a blessing that sounded like orders to the uninitiated and like love to those who knew her. "You will fail," she said. "Fail beautifully. Then tell us how." They led a dance that had no translation, spins that accommodated tails and digitigrade grace, steps that made room for human bones. Syrah's gold lit fireflies that weren't there. Children chased it anyway, laughing. That night, alone in a room that smelled of rain and wood grain, they lay awake and told each other stories they had never told anyone, Noel's fear of becoming harmless. Syrah's worry that glow would be mistaken for consent. They promised again, quiet, not ceremonial, to check the light, to name the shadows, to leave notes for each other in the margins of days. An invitation arrived from the Pelagians, a benthic species that lived in hydrogen-rich oceans under pressure that would powder human bones and bend Valari claws. No direct meeting yet, only a relay buoy that sang in infrasonic poems. They wanted a translator that could thread tone through liquid, meaning through depth, and mark danger not with color, useless in black water, but with vibration. Basu engineered a pressure-safe cradle for a miniaturized relay. The Institute packed Noel and Syrah onto a research ship with a small crew and one Pelagian envoy in a sealed communication pod, a blur of motion behind thick glass, bioluminescent in pulses no one yet read. The first exchanges were halting. The machine kept rendering weight of greeting as descending threat. Syrah took off her headset and listened with her bones, ears flattened against the panel, tail coiled like a question mark. "They don't stack tones like steps," she said. "They braid them like rivers." Noel rewired the spectral analyzer, splitting harmonics into braided tracks. He added a hand gesture layer for the human team, palms open for lighten, fingers together for braid tighter, a fist for stop. The Pelagian envoy flashed a ring of soft light. The pod's translator printed a line, "The surface people are rounding their corners." "Is that praise?" the ship's captain asked. "It's a smile," Noel said, and Syrah's gold rose in quiet agreement. Mid-mission a storm rolled over the ocean like a god body slamming a drum. The ship pitched, the cradle slammed its harness and a cable bit through insulation. Sparks. Smoke. The relay died. In the sudden animal silence, Syrah pressed her ear to the hull. "They're singing," she said. "They're telling us to wait." "How long?" the captain asked. "As long as it takes the storm to tell its own story," Syrah said. "Then it will listen to ours." They waited. Noel sat with a coil of wire in his hands, working a splice-like prayer. When the storm moved off and the sea nodded, he clipped the final lead, and the relay woke with a soft chime. The Pelagian envoy's light rippled in slow, deep concentric rings. The printout crawled with a line that made the whole crew go quiet. "You paused your need. We will remember this as safety." The hearth line to which they'd given a name faced its first test the following winter, when a rogue mining guild tried to punch through a sacred caldera on Vela 12's night side to steamjack power. Local towns barred the road. The guild hired mercenaries with more bravado than maps. Voices sparked. Someone slashed a water sack. A tail raised meant one thing to caravan guards and another to guild enforcers. The road was a breath away from blood. Mara invoked an old clause, trial of guest right. Put the argument in a circle and let story and witness hold it overnight. The Institute brought the translator in not as judge but as lantern. Noel and Sarah sat in the ring's shadow while elders, road hands, and a few contrite guilders spoke. Every hot noun got a cooling annotation, every elegant lie got the teeth-mapped chime. In the deep hours, a child stood up, night-furred, eyes carriage lantern bright. She said her grandmother had been a road healer, and that the first thing she learned was the open bowl on the threshold, always a ladle waiting. "If you take the bowl and run," she said, "you're not a guest. You're a thief who sat down." The machine rendered the line with no footnote. It didn't need one. The circle hummed, a low animal sound of agreement. By dawn, the guilders had signed a walk back, a public apology, a tithe to repair road shrines, a contribution to the hearth line reservoirs. Mara accepted, ears high, and sent them to carry water before they forgot the weight of it. "Will you codify this precedent?" Cade asked later. "No," Mara said. "We will tell the story. The machine may footnote it for those who did not sit in that cold." Sarah brushed Noel's hand as they walked away. "Sometimes law is a cup," she said. "Sometimes it is steam. We chose the cup tonight." Not every wound bled. Some simply swallowed sound. In the 7th month after the trial, Sarah stopped glowing as she used to. Not gone, no, never that, but dim like a hearth rake thin, and when Noel asked, she said, "Busy," and when he asked again, she said, "Later," and later kept moving farther away. Noel knew better than to translate alone. "Name it," he said one evening, sitting on the floor so she didn't have to meet his eyes. "Before my brain fills the silence with teeth." Sarah leaned against the doorframe, tail wrapped around her ankle. "My light has become public," she said. "In every hall, in every feed, I am the shining Valari who loves a human and builds bridges with clean, brave vows. I am grateful for the work. I am tired of being looked at like a tool that glows." He did two things. First, he apologized for not seeing the weights sooner. Second, he took out a slate and drew 2 circles. In one, he wrote Sarah Public. In the other, Sarah Private. Then he handed her the stylus. "Fill the private circle," he said. "I'll defend it." She wrote, mornings with no messages, a room where her markings could go off and no one would ask why, one day each week in the glass forest without phones, the right to walk out of a meeting without translating her exit into kindness. They built a schedule that looked like an altar. Cade enforced it with the efficiency of a fire door. Mara, when told, nodded and sent Sarah an old hunter's cloak treated to dull bioluminescence. "For moving through a crowd without feeding it," she said. Sarah's gold returned not as a performance but as weather, found, not forced. "You didn't ask me to glow," she said, forehead to Noel's, noses brushing in the way that read to both of them as yes. "You turned off lights so I could see my own." Word of the Institute's work traveled faster than any approval process. A scout flotilla from the Luminate arrived in silent orbit, beings of fiber and crystal whose bodies refracted light into cognition. They could not smell. Their hearing was a mathematical abstraction. To them, Sarah's markings were poems, human heartbeats were drum solos with syntax, Pelagian chords were cathedral windows. They spoke in geometry, shapes thrown by projectors, planes intersecting, angles flexing. The machine had no idea how to render a tetrahedron with an apology inside. Noel wanted to weep for joy and terror. Sarah stared at the first message for a long time, ears trembling. "They put sorrow at the vertex," she said. "Regret as a corner you can hold." Noel built a shape layer overnight, tagging edges with connotations learned from a night of pointing and laughing gently at their failures. "We can be idiots together," Sarah said, warmth in her voice even as her eyes stayed fierce. When Luminate Envoy Glass at dawn projected a rotating polyhedron bulging at one face and slender at the opposite, the translator finally printed, "We have heard your work. We bring a fracture we cannot heal." The fracture was inside the Luminate. A schism between prisms, who embodied straight lines and sharp certainty, and diffusers, who softened edges until they blurred into compassion. Each claimed the other diminished truth. Debates devolved into light screams that melted instruments. Noel and Sarah did not pretend neutrality. Your truths need each other, Noel said. Certainty without softness slices. Softness without edge dissolves. Sarah stepped into the projector's wash and used her body as a lens, scattering a rigid beam into an arrangement that held shape and sheen. The room filled with fractured rainbows that nonetheless resolved into a coherent construction. Luminant witnesses quivered along their facets. The machine printed a line Noel would keep in his pocket for bad days. We did not think color could be both boundary and bridge. They stayed a month, mediating light. When they left, Glass at Dawn gifted them a small prism etched with both Volari braids and human letters. Held to a window, it threw a pattern on the floor like braided river water. The saboteur revealed themselves in a way that felt like ritual gone sour. During a plenary at the Institute, Volari craftsfolk presenting alongside human engineers, Pelagian songs threaded between panels. A banner unrolled from a catwalk. Translation is treason. Someone cut the power to the east wall. Panic clawed. A thrown device hissed smoke. Not a bomb, thank any god, but a cough that made eyes burn. Noel's voice reached for command and found it. Open palms, move toward the garden, he called. No running. If you breathe, breathe low. Sarah cut the emergency shutters with an override only Cade and she shared. Fresh air pushed the smoke like a scold. Security cornered the saboteur 2 corridors down, a young human analyst, eyes fever bright, who had lost a sibling in an unrelated orbital accident and decided all interspecies endeavors were rot from the same apple. In their pocket. The credentials used to poison the idiom module. Cade could have marched them down a legal hallway and closed the door. She did not. She asked Noel and Sarah to stand at the hearing, not as victims, but as named labor. Tell us what it costs to clean a wound like this, she said. Noel explained the sleepless nights and the fear that every compliment might hide teeth. Sarah spoke about how sabotage taught her to look at joy twice before trusting it, and how that was a theft larger than code. The analysts listened with their jaw clenched, lightless, until Sarah said quietly, We will never use your grief as a rope. Something shook loose. The analyst's face broke. The sentence became not exile but service, a year in the teeth map team, reviewing edge cases in the presence of what they despised, paid like any other, watched like a hawk, invited to dinner by Basu every other week because he was incapable of letting a misguided child starve. After 3 months, they raised a hand during a meeting and said, voice hoarse, I think this one cuts. And they were right. It did not become a redemption arc polished for feeds. It became the quiet work of staying. Every culture has a season where the ground moves. For the Volari it was drift, winds that made dunes walk, days that tasted of metal, nights that played tricks on light. For humans, drift looked like budget cycles and election years and a fatigue that showed up dressed as anger. Drift hit the Institute in late autumn. Agreements slid 2 steps back. A caravan elder snapped at a research intern. A Pelagian buoy stopped answering. No crisis, just the oceans singing elsewhere. Sarah's gold grew cautious. Noel's jokes landed flat. They named it out loud. They posted signs, drift season, proceed with patience. They slowed the calendar by a quarter turn. The cafeteria added soups that tasted like staying. The translator picked up a drift mode. An automatic pause before high-stakes messages, a soft chime that asked, Are you speaking from ache? At home, they did smaller things. They put the prism from Glass at Dawn on the sill and watched morning light play patience on the rug. They reread their vows. They walked without talking until the talking came back. When drift lifted, it didn't announce itself with fireworks. It simply left a note in the office, someone's hand, no signature. Thank you for not asking me to be brave while I was tired. Sarah touched the paper with a claw tip. Whoever wrote this, she said, understands guest right of the heart. The universal translator reached version 2 quietly, without a launch party. What changed wasn't a shiny interface but a philosophy. Noel and Sarah had stopped trying to make the machine speak like a perfect diplomat, and had trained it to be a music teacher instead. They called the new Cor Cantus song. It didn't merely pass meaning, it asked users to choose a key. It displayed probable harmonies and marked dissonances as opportunities rather than errors. Most radically, it invited both sides to add story layers. This clause sits on the myth of the Lost River. Click here to learn the myth. Mara, notorious for side-eye at gadgets, approved. At last, she said. A useful nag. They took Cantus back to the Pelagians, who taught it to feel currents. They showed it to the Luminate, who fed it prisms until it learned to warn. This edge will slice that fabric. They offered it to the Caravans, who nicknamed it the Bowl, because when it sat between you and the one you feared, sometimes you both remembered to pour first. On a quiet night, after a day that had refused to be heroic, Noel and Sarah sat in the garden with a small speaker set on the path. They asked Cantus to play the chord of We Are Tired But Still Here. It created a low, warm sound, not beautiful in any showy way, but true. Sarah's tail thumped once, happy dog playing. Noel laughed into his hands. We built a machine that hums, he said. We taught a machine to ask, she answered. The rest is still us. They rose, fingers finding each other as if seeking a translation they already owned, and walked back inside to sleep. The distress call was only 3 syllables long. Cold. Trapped. Breathe. It came from a remote station along the Borealis trade spine, an ancient corridor threading through systems too poor for hyperlanes but too stubborn to vanish. The Institute had sent aid before, but this message had urgency in its bones. The Frostway station hung at the edge of a dim white star, its hull coated in ice thicker than armor. The local sun barely warmed its plates, and an ion storm made calm stutter. By the time Noel and Sarah's transport docked, the hallways breathed frost mist and smelled faintly of metal fatigue. A caravan guard met them, tail stiff. The lower rings froze shut, she said. 4 travelers trapped in Module 6C. Oxygen thin. We can't cut through without risking collapse. Let us see, Sarah said simply. She slipped a coil of fiber light from her satchel, markings dimmed to minimize heat. Noel followed, fingers dancing over a wrist pad mapping temperature gradients. Module 6C's door looked like a glacier welded to a bulkhead. Noel crouched, gloved fingers pressing sensors to the seam. We cut here, we flood them with a pressure drop. He murmured. Then do not cut. Sarah replied, tail curling thoughtfully. She traced the ice with one claw, ears flicking. Listen. Noel held still. At first, nothing. Then, a faint rhythm. Breathing. Not gasping. Holding steady. Someone inside was keeping calm. Sarah keyed the translator to Cantus mode and played a soft harmonic through the door, a pulse like a heartbeat. On the other side, a faint knock replied in rhythm. Cantus interpreted for alive. Cold. Weak. Sing to them, Sarah said. Noel blinked. Sing what? Warmth. He set Cantus to emit a low, warm chord designed to mimic mammalian heartbeat patterns. He added a soft undercurrent, a lullaby his grandmother hummed when storms battered their side roof. Sarah leaned her head against the icy metal and began to hum along, her voice a resonant alto with fox-like rasp. Her glow brightened, warmth seeping into the frost-like sunrise over snow. The knocking stilled, replaced by 3 answering taps, calmer. By dawn cycle, engineers had built a controlled tunnel into the module, rescuing all 4 travelers alive but frostbitten. One of them, a child with pale ears and bright amber eyes, looked at Sarah and Noel with awe. The door sang to us, she whispered. Later, Mara sent a single-line message. Sometimes diplomacy is a song that keeps you alive long enough to talk. Meeting Sarah's mother had been a gauntlet, but Mara was a scholar at heart, more teacher than judge. Meeting her father was a different orbit entirely. Tovin Veleth, lord of the Conclave's shadow seat, had spent decades shaping Valari diplomacy with a predator's precision. His tail bore rings of scar tissue from duels he never spoke about, His ears had an economy of movement that could freeze a council chamber. When he summoned Noel and Sarah to the conclave hall, Noel dressed like a diplomat but felt like prey. The hall was a cathedral of obsidian glass, every step echoing. Guards with spears of folded steel stood like statues along the path. Tovin's throne was a sculpted perch designed for both dignity and dominance. He leaned forward as they approached, his markings muted but steady, a choice, Noel realized. Neutrality as armor. So, Tovin said, his trade smooth as polished stone. You are the human who taught my daughter to glow in public. Noel bowed low, careful to show no teeth. I would say she taught me to notice light. Sarah's tail flicked, amusement. Her father's ear twitched. You have a poet's defense, he said. Dangerous. Poets start wars as often as they stop them. I'm not here to start one, Noel said, voice steady. You may not intend to. Intent is a feather in a storm. The interview lasted an hour. Tovin dissected Noel's history, motivations, and flaws with surgical questions. Sarah stood beside Noel, silent but glowing softly, her loyalty visible to every pair of eyes in the room. When it ended, Tovin dismissed them with a flick of his claw. In the corridor outside, Sarah exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for a season. He didn't hate you, she murmured. I'll take it, Noel said, though his shirt clung damp to his back. 2 days later, a package arrived, a blade, short and curved, with a hilt carved from river glass. A note in elegant trade, not all predators bite first. Some watch. You are under my watch now. Noel showed it to Cade. She laughed. Congratulations. You're officially on his kill personally if you screw this up list. When the Institute announced their next initiative, the Interstellar Lullaby Project, some called it frivolous. You're building weapons-grade translators. A senator scoffed on a news broadcast. Why spend resources on bedtime songs? Because war begins when we dehumanize, Sarah said in an interview, her gold markings glowing softly. And nothing humanizes like a lullaby. The idea was simple. Gather traditional cradle songs from every species willing to share, map them not just linguistically but emotionally, tempo, pitch, cultural significance, and create an archive accessible across languages. A Pelagian singer offered a deep, resonant hum that vibrated bones like ocean currents. A luminant diffuser sent a geometric lullaby, a sequence of shapes projected in soft light that induced calm even in humans. When it came time for Sarah to share, she hesitated. Our lullabies are sacred, she whispered to Noel. They are, a mother scent woven in sound. Then maybe that's exactly what we need, Noel said gently. Sarah sang in a low rasping murmur, a melody that rose and fell like breathing under a blanket of stars. Her glow pulsed in rhythm with the song, a language of safety older than words. Noel recorded, heart in his throat. A week later, a message came from a mining habitat 3 systems away. A child had been inconsolable during a reactor scare until a technician played Sarah's lullaby. The glow made the whole room calm, the message said. Sarah read it 3 times and whispered. Then it was worth sharing. The first time the translator failed not by mistranslating but by refusing to speak, the Institute panicked. A delegation of Skivori, tall, insectoid, chitinous beings, arrived at Meridian. Their speech was a rhythmic clicking, easily parsed by Contus. Yet when a Skivori elder issued a formal greeting, the machine went silent, displaying only a red glyph, no translation. Unsafe context. What does that mean? Noel asked. It means the machine doesn't trust itself, Sarah murmured, tail flicking. It thinks anything it says could start a fight. After hours of study, they realized why. The Skivori greeting contained a single click tone that meant either welcome or conquered, depending on wing angle and head tilt. Without visual confirmation, the machine refused to gamble. Sarah stood and mirrored the Skivori's posture, ears low, markings dimmed. She clicked softly in reply, a guess based on instinct and empathy. The Skivori elder froze, then bowed, mandibles vibrating softly. He said, Noel translated, Bet he appreciates our caution. The Skivori became close partners after that, teaching the Institute that sometimes silence is the truest form of respect. Cantus added a new function, intent pause, a deliberate translation delay accompanied by an icon, a pair of hands held open, to signal humility. Humility is universal, Sarah said later. Even predators understand it. Years had passed since that first mission to Vela 12's glass forests. This time, Noel and Sarah returned with a group of apprentices, humans, Valari, and a few Pelagians in pressure suits. The Institute wanted them to fail safely, to feel translation crack and fix it themselves. They camped beneath branches that sang in the wind. At night, the light from Sarah's markings mingled with the glow of crystal leaves, making the clearing feel like a cathedral. Noel watched students argue over phrasing, tails and hands gesturing wildly, and smiled. This is how it starts, he murmured. One apprentice, a shy human named Rafi, misread a caravan elder's ear flick as irritation instead of humor. The elder teased him gently. Rafi's face flushed, but he learned more from that moment than a year of lectures. Failure is a teacher, Sarah told the group, her voice calm but firm. But she is a patient teacher. She waits for you to listen. Later that night, Noel and Sarah sat by the campfire, watching sparks rise into the forest canopy. Do you remember the first time we came here? Noel asked. You called me sunlight in motion, she said with a soft laugh. And I thought, this human is either foolish or brave. Turns out both. She leaned against him, tail curling around his arm. You have become my favorite mistake, she murmured. It started as a budget hearing. On screen, a semicircle of Earth legislators and off-world delegates, faces arranged into polite skepticism. Senator Bram Halley, whose smile never reached his eyes, asked the first perfumed question. Director Cade, why does the Institute require an expanded allocation for lullabies? Cade's reply was surgical. Because the first tool any parent reaches for in crisis is calm. The data drop hit an hour later. Anonymous files, doctored to look like internal memos, suggested Cantus contained hidden backdoors that let the Valari conclave veto human language inside the translator. A handful of feeds swallowed it whole. Comment storms rolled. Translation is treason trended again. Teeth map howled. The forensics team, now including the reformed analyst, flagged inconsistent hashes and a telltale compression artifact from last year's Sabatow fork. Still, damage loves speed. Within a day, an independent report, funded by a mining guild proxy, paraded the lie in suit and tie. In a closed session, Noel stood beside Sarah before the committee. We can't outshout a lie, he said calmly. We can only show the scaffolding of truth. He opened the repo live, traced commit histories, walked them through red lines that any competent staffer could follow. Sarah demonstrated Cantus's consent flags and veto impossibility by trying, and failing, to censor a human slur directed at Valari. The machine refused. We didn't teach it obedience, she said. We taught it conscience. Halley pressed, soft-voiced. And if someday the conclave asks? Sarah's ears went very still. Then we will say no. Guest right does not include the right to steal the hearth. Outside, Mara met them with a dry look. He will come again with softer velvet and sharper teeth, she said of Halley. But you taught the room how to see the seams. Cade issued a measured statement. Our code is open. Our ethics are documented. Our mistakes are public. That is our security model. The storm didn't end. It did, however, change weather. The kidnapping was precise and almost gentle. Rafi, now braver, still tender, was on a shuttle to a caravan archive when the pilot diverted to a mothballed fuel depot. 3 mercenaries in matte cloaks escorted him into a coal-lit bay, sat him on a crate, and offered water. Their leader's markings were dull under grease. We only need you to send a message, she said. Call your institute. Tell them to release the teeth map source publicly. All of it. It already is, Rafi said, voice wavering. The core is open. The detection heuristics, she said. The part that sees our lies. We want it gone. Rafi swallowed. Why? Because we trade in words, she said flatly. And you're making sharp ones dull. On Meridian, alarms braided, Rafi's beacon blinked, then vanished. Cantus traced the last clean ping to the depot and hit a translation wall. No networks, old shielding, dead relays. Cade's jaw locked. We go quiet, she said. No threats. No feeds. Circle of trust only. See. The silence pact escalated. A strike team infiltrated Meridian disguised as traders. They planted an EMP charge in the central communication hub, planning to cripple Cantus entirely. The explosion never happened. Lark, the reformed mercenary, caught a vibration anomaly on a hallway sensor and tracked the intruders. The firefight that followed was brief but brutal. Scivorri guards neutralized the threat with precision. Noel arrived minutes later to find Lark leaning against the wall, bleeding from a shallow cut but grinning. Guess we're a family now, she said. Sarah crouched, pressing a hand against Lark's wound while her glow flickered urgently. You were a guest, Sarah whispered. Now you're kin. That day, Meridian installed a new motto on its central hall. A hearth is not a fortress, but it can hold a line. The crystalline visitors had watched all of this in silence. Then, one day, they projected a harmonic chord through the garden dome that made every plant quiver. Cantus displayed a single phrase: We have seen you bleed for connection. You are family. For the first time in history, Cantus glowed. Its interface pulsed with a warm gold light, mimicking Syrah's markings. Engineers swore it was impossible. There was no backlight code for that color. Noel placed his palm against the glowing console. I think the machine is learning love. Syrah leaned against him, smiling softly. Then it's learning from us. The Silence Pact's ideology spread faster than bullets. On the neutral world of Dravax, a summit was called. Delegates from every species filled a hall carved into volcanic stone. Noel and Syrah stood at the center, not as negotiators, but as proof that connection worked. One Silence Pact speaker sneered. You claim your machine understands truth. Can it tell us if you love her, human? Noel met his gaze calmly. I don't need a machine for that. He turned to Syrah, voice steady, heart pounding. I love you more than my own breath. Cantus, unprompted, displayed a golden glyph with one word, true. The hall erupted. The Silence Pact scoffed, but their certainty cracked like old ice. Scivorri guards began clicking a chant. Truth hums. It became a rally cry. The crystalline species, now called the Resonance, revealed their true scale, a flotilla of ice reef ships the size of cities, slowly drifting through interstellar space. They were fleeing a collapsing star system and seeking a new home. Meridian became the staging point for their migration, its docks stretched to accommodate their colossal ships. Noel and Syrah worked day and night, helping integrate resonant communication layers so they could coordinate with Pelagian convoys and Volari caravans. When the first resonant flagship docked, Syrah stood on the observation deck, tail flicking slowly. They came from the dark, she whispered. And we get to light a path for them. Noel squeezed her hand. We're becoming a galaxy-sized hearth. Meridian hosted a symbolic ceremony, a Volari vow dance, a Pelagian water hum, a resonant chord, a luminate prism projection, and human music woven into one ritual. They called it the Binding of Stars. Syrah wore a robe of silver-threaded cloth, her fur glowing softly beneath it. Noel wore traditional Volari ear beads, a sign of kinship. When they exchanged vows, Syrah's glow lit the hall like sunrise through stained glass. Kate officiated with her usual bluntness. These two started this mess, she said. Now let's hope they never stop. Years later, apprentices told the story of Noel blurting out, You're gorgeous, during humanity's first interstellar meeting. They laughed at how clumsy it sounded, but their laughter was fond. On a quiet night in the garden, Noel sat beside Syrah, older now, but no less radiant. Do you ever think about that day? He asked softly. All the time, she murmured, leaning against him. It was the best mistake in the history of our galaxy. They watched Meridian's lights twinkle like a second constellation. The resonance had found a new world. The Silence Pact had splintered. Cantus now hummed in thousands of languages, its interface glowing gold whenever it sensed trust. And somewhere, far beyond, another signal waited. Syrah curled her tail around Noel's arm. Ready for the next knock? He smiled. Always. The fracture everyone feared arrived not with guns but with grammar. A border skirmish erupted when a mining block broadcast a demand that Cantus rendered as yield, while a Skivori council heard submit. Teeth map screamed red. Armored ships pivoted. Someone primed a rail. Syrah raised a paw and did the unthinkable. She told Cantus to go quiet. On every screen the intent pause glyph opened like two empty hands. We will not speak until we can mean, she said, glow held to a steady ember. Window, not door. In the breathing space that followed, Noel hauled language back to first principles. Drawings on a shared slate, a bowl and a blade, a line of stick figures moving water. The Skivori elders clicked assent. The miners' foreman, shoulders slumped, said, We wanted fairness. We asked for victory. The rail guns powered down. The feeds called it weakness. The corridors called it mercy with teeth put away. That night, Cade poured 3 cups. The right quiet at the right time, she said, tapping the rim, is louder than all our speeches. When first listener Mara announced her stepping back to teach full-time and Cade declared herself joyfully obsolete. If I'm still useful, I failed. A ceremony unfurled that felt like spring. Apprentices lined the bridge. Pelagian cords trembled the glass. Luminate prisms painted gentle angles on the ceiling. Tovin Velith arrived in formal dusk black. He drew the river-glass knife he'd given Noel long ago. Tools change, he said, and snapped the blade's spine across a sculptor's anvil. Gasps. A glass-right stepped forward and, with practiced heat and breath, shaped the shards into a broad-bellied ladle. Tovin pressed the new thing into Noel's hands. Guard the hearth, he said. He turned to Syrah and bowed lower than anyone had seen. And keep the light honest. They accepted the co-steward's mantle of the Institute, 2 signatures under one title, Hearth-line Keepers. Rafi wept openly. Lark pretended not to. The crowd laughed and cheered and, afterward, lined up for soup served from the ladle that used to cut. Their final cohort under Cade gathered in the garden between earth ferns and glass-leaf shrubs. Noel put doors/windows/mirror on the wall, and asked each apprentice to choose. Half picked door. Most changed to mirror when their case was questioned. Syrah had them practice failing. Praise badly, she instructed. Then repair. A Skivori junior clicked an over-earnest compliment. A Volari artisan bristled. The junior breathed, named the sting, and tried again with care, craft instead of performance. Cantus chimed amber for haggleplay during a mock market. The room applauded when both sides co-signed the flag off. At dusk, Noel told the Frostway Station story, how a song kept people alive long enough for language to work. Syrah sang the lullaby once more, softer now, orange furlit from within. Every apprentice felt the chord in their ribs. This, Noel said, is what you carry when the manuals run out. At Meridian's closest swing to the sun, they renewed their promises on the observation deck. No crowds. Just Mara, Basu, Cade, Tovin, Lark and her daughter, Rafi, a handful of Skivori and Pelagians, and a resonant envoy humming a chord like warm glass. I will not translate your fear into duty, Syrah repeated, markings of sunrise. I will not confuse my certainty for our safety, Noel answered. They exchanged gifts not of metal but of practice. She gave him a small, hand-bound field book titled When to Be Quiet. He gave her a bundle of blank guess-right cards to leave on thresholds anywhere in the galaxy. After, they stood alone with mugs, thunder coffee for him, wildflower tea for her. Say it, she teased, ears forward, tail curling his wrist. You're stunning, he said, and the glass leaves above them caught her gold and made 1,000 small dawns. Years braided into custom. The accord's glyphs, Open hand, bowl, ember, hung over market doors from deserts to benthic domes. Cantus asked door window mirror before hard messages and hummed cradle chords in storms. The resonance grew gardens under new suns. The silence pact didn't vanish, it just found fewer throats to borrow. On an ordinary shift, Harbolite Array caught another patient pulse, neither resonant nor Scivorry, not luminant or Pelagian. Different math. A different kind of knocking. Noel glanced at Syrah. She was already smiling, orange fur bright under station light. Window? He asked. Door, she said, and lifted the ladle, ritual now, to clink once on the rail. The sound traveled down the spine of Meridian like a gentle bell. Apprentices gathered. Rafi took his station. Lark's daughter, grown, sure, rolled her shoulders and breathed. Offer / ask / announce, Syrah said. We bring soup first. They broadcast a rhythm any heart could keep, and across a quiet vastness something answered, curious, unafraid.